Welcome, UCL fans, to the Week 10 unofficial review and ranking for the United Championship League. I'm Nintendo Fanatic 64, and I have crunched the numbers, and I have come up with a fair and accurate ranking system for the United Championship League. Now, before I get into this, of course, I'd like to mention I am in no way affiliated with the UCL or any of the coaches involved. This is just something I do in my spare time for fun. Hopefully, maybe make something bigger out of this later. I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and jump into the review of the 8 matches that took place this week in the 10th week of the UCL. So, starting off, we have the Toronto Tokakis, whose record is 3-6, taking on the Pittsburgh Pichus, whose record is 4-5. And is a 4-0 victory for the Pittsburgh Pichus. The MVP of the match goes to Entei from the Pittsburgh Pichus with 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose record is 1-8, taking on the Manchester Magnazones, whose record is 0-9. And it is a 2-0 victory for the Grand Canyon Greninjas. MVP of the match goes to the Nidoking from Grand Canyon, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Durham Druddigons, whose record is 5-4, taking on the Tulsa Talonflames, whose record is also 5-4. And it was a 2-0 victory for the Durham Druddigons. MVP of the match goes to the Mienshao, from the Durham Druddigons, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we had the New York Mankeys, whose record is 6-3, taking on the Long Island Reggie-Rockies, whose record is 5-4. And it was a 3-0 victory for the New York Mankeys. MVP of the match goes to Milotic from the New York Mankeys, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Tucson Terrakions, whose record is 7-2, taking on the Philadelphia Feraligators, whose record was 5-4. And it was a 6-2 victory for the Tucson Terrakions when the Philadelphia Feraligators forfeited the match. MVP of the match went to Flygon from the Tucson Terrakions, who did manage to get 2 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Newcastle Nidokings, whose record is 7-2, taking on the South Beach Slowkings, whose record is 1-8. And it was a 4-0 victory for the Newcastle Nidokings. MVP of the match goes to Mega Venusaur from the Newcastle Nidokings, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. Up next, we have the Carolina Keldios, whose record is 4-5, taking on the Bristol City Blazekins, whose record was also 4-5. And it was a 3-0 victory for the Bristol City Blazekins. MVP of the match goes to the Mega Scizor from Bristol City, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. In the final match of the week, we had the St. Louis Rampardos, whose record is 8-1, taking on the Bronx Beartics, whose record was 6-2. No, wait, that doesn't sound right. I think they were 7. No, my bad. They were 7-2 this last week for it, going into the match. I had the wrong thing written down, I think. But it was a 3-0 victory for the St. Louis Rampardos. MVP of the match goes to Conkelder from St. Louis, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. So that will do it for the actual ranking, or the review of it. Now we're going to go ahead and go into the rankings. Now, the way I have it set up is via a point system. A team earns 1 point every time they knock out an opponent's Pokemon. They lose 1 point whenever their own Pokemon gets knocked out. Now, with that, they don't earn any points if an opponent's Pokemon is knocked out when using any type of self-destructing move, such as obviously self-destruct, final gambit, memento, or even if they use anything like if they die to life orb or recoil damage, because they did not deliver the final blow in it. So, at ranked number 16 this week is the Manchester Magnazones, whose record now stands at 0-10 and have a score of -40. At number 15, we have the South Beach Slowkings, whose record is 1-9 and a score of -28. At number 14, we have the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose record is now 2-8 and have a score of -17. And at 13, we have the Carolina Keldios, whose record is 4-6 and have a score of -14. Ranked number 12 this week is the Toronto Tokakis, who have a record of 3-7 and a score of -13. At number 11, we have the Bristol City Blazekins, whose record is 5-5 and have a score of -4. At number 10, we have the Tulsa Talonflames, whose record is 5-5 and have a score of -2. At number 9, we have the Long Island Reggie-Rockies, whose record is now 5-5 and a score of -2 as well. At number 8, we have the Philadelphia Alligators, whose record is 5-5 and a score of -1. At number 7, we have the Pittsburgh Peaches, whose record is 5-5, but have a score of +7. At number 6, we have the Durham Druddigons, whose record is 6-4 and a score of 9. At number 5, we have the Bronx Bearticks, whose record is 7-3 and a score of 9. At number 4, we have the New York Yankees, whose record is 7-3 and a score of 13. At number 3, we have the Tucson Terrakions, whose record is now 8-2 and have a score of 14. In the second ranked spot, we have the Newcastle Nido Kings, whose record is 8-2 and have a score of 20. And then finally, with a record of 9-1 and a score of 26, we have the St. Louis Rampardos. So that is what I have for the rankings going after the week 10. Going into week 11, we have 5 more weeks left. I think, trying not to make too many predictions. I can foresee right now the Newcastle Nido Kings, the Tucson Terrakions, and the St. Louis Rampardos probably making the playoffs. The fourth team that could join them could be anywhere between the Durham Druddigons, the Bronx Bearticks, or the New York Yankees. There's still a slight possibility for the Pittsburgh Peaches, but they have a longer road to climb for it. I feel confident that at least St. Louis and the St. Louis Rampardos and the Newcastle Nido Kings will make it. Tucson Terrakions might not have as high a ranking by that time, might be coming in at 4th. We'll have to see. Like I said, there is 5 more weeks left to go. Early predictions for playoffs at least go St. Louis Rampardos, Newcastle Nido Kings, and Tucson Terrakions. But we'll be back next week with more reviews and rankings. Let me know in the comments section what team you're voting for. If you approve of this list, of course, please give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think of my rankings as well. But until then, I will see you all next time. Take care and good night.